The fastest man in basketball history didn't first learn how to run toward greatness. He learned how to run away from danger. Before the bright lights of Chicago, before the MVP chants, before arenas screamed his name like he was their last hope, there was a skinny kid in Southside Chicago sprinting past abandoned buildings, broken glass, and sirens that never seemed to sleep. Derrick Martell Rose wasn't chasing basketball at first. He was chasing survival. Because in Inglewood, Chicago, speed wasn't talent. Speed was protection. And every step he took growing up wasn't toward the NBA. It was away from becoming another statistic. This is not the story of a prodigy. This is the story of a neighborhood that builds fighters or buries them. And this is how a quiet kid who barely spoke became the fastest storm basketball has ever seen. Derrick Rose was born October 4, 1988, in Inglewood, one of Chicago's most dangerous neighborhoods during the late 80s and early 90s. Inglewood wasn't just rough, it was war disguised as a neighborhood. Crack epidemics, gang territory disputes, poverty, and violence formed the soundtrack of everyday life. For kids growing up there, childhood moved fast, because if you slowed down, you risked not making it at all. Derrick was the youngest of 4 boys, raised by his mother, Brenda Rose. Brenda was the cornerstone of the family, a single mother working tirelessly to raise 4 sons while keeping them away from street influence, and that was nearly impossible in Inglewood. Derrick's older brothers, Reggie, Alan, and Dwayne, had already seen what the streets could do. They watched friends fall into gangs, drugs, and crime. Some disappeared into prison systems. Others never made it past their teenage years. They made a decision early. Derrick would not become another lost story. While other kids roamed the streets freely, Derrick was heavily protected by his brothers. They walked him to school. They watched his surroundings. They shielded him like bodyguards protecting something fragile or something destined. They didn't just see a little brother. They saw potential. But potential means nothing without an outlet. And Derrick's outlet came in the form of an orange basketball. Derrick Rose wasn't loud. He wasn't charismatic. He wasn't flashy in personality. He barely spoke. Teachers described him as shy. Teammates called him quiet. Friends sometimes wondered if he was even comfortable with attention. But Derrick spoke fluently in movement. At just 5 years old, he was already showing unnatural control of the basketball. His older brothers would take him to local courts, sometimes forcing him to play against older competition. And something unusual started happening. He wasn't just keeping up. He was dominating. Derrick played with an instinct that couldn't be taught. He saw passing lanes before they opened. He moved through defenders like he knew where they would step seconds before they did. But it wasn't just talent. It was urgency. Kids who grow up surrounded by chaos often develop a heightened awareness. Derrick played basketball like he was reading danger, calculating escape routes, predicting movement before it happened. That instinct would later become his greatest weapon, his ability to slash through defenses like he was bending time. But during those early years, the basketball courts of Chicago were more than playgrounds. They were auditions. Because Chicago basketball culture is ruthless, and legends are either made or exposed. Derrick Rose's rise wasn't built alone. It was engineered. His older brothers took control of every aspect of his basketball journey. They monitored who he played with, they controlled his schedule, they even limited his exposure to certain people and programs they believed could exploit him. Some critics would later question their involvement, but in Inglewood, protection wasn't optional. It was survival strategy. They refused to let Derrick become another young star manipulated by street influences or shady recruiting circles. Reggie Rose, in particular, became Derrick's unofficial manager before Derrick even understood what management meant. He negotiated AAU participation carefully. He filtered outside influences. He made sure Derrick stayed focused on development rather than hype. Because Chicago had seen gifted players before, players who never made it out. Derrick Rose was not allowed to be one of them. Everything changed when Derrick Rose enrolled at Simeon Career Academy. Simeon wasn't just a high school, it was a basketball factory, and it was run by one of the most respected high school coaches in America, Robert Smith. When Coach Smith first watched Derrick Rose play, he didn't see just speed or athleticism. He saw leadership buried beneath silence. But Simeon demanded structure, discipline, and accountability, and Derrick struggled at first. Not physically, mentally. He was naturally introverted and uncomfortable being the center of attention, but Simeon required stars to lead vocally, emotionally, and strategically. Coach Smith pushed him relentlessly. He demanded Derrick become more than talented. He demanded Derrick become responsible for others. And that transformation didn't happen overnight. By his sophomore year, Derrick Rose was no longer just promising. He was terrifying. At 6'3", with lightning acceleration, Derrick combined elite speed with rare body control. He could change direction mid-air. He could absorb contact and still finish gracefully. But what truly separated him was how effortlessly he made everything look. He didn't celebrate. He didn't taunt opponents. He simply attacked. And Chicago crowds noticed. Soon, Simeon games became citywide events. Gyms overflowed. Spectators stood shoulder to shoulder just to witness Derrick glide through defenders like they were standing still. By his junior year, Rose led Simeon to the Illinois State Championship. Then, he did it again his senior year. Back-to-back state titles. But statistics alone couldn't capture his impact. Derrick Rose became hope. Not just for Simeon, for Chicago. Chicago is a city obsessed with basketball. And after Michael Jordan retired, the city was starving for its next hero. That hunger found Derrick Rose. Media attention exploded. Recruiters flooded Simeon's hallways. National rankings placed him among the best players in the country. But Derrick didn't react like most rising superstars. He became quieter, more reserved, because deep down, he wasn't chasing fame, he was carrying expectation. Chicago didn't just want Derrick Rose to succeed, they needed him to. And that kind of pressure can crush young athletes. By senior year, every major college basketball program wanted Derrick Rose. Kansas, Illinois, Indiana, Memphis. But the decision wasn't purely basketball. It was about trust. Eventually, Derrick chose the University of Memphis, coached by John Calipari, a coach known for developing elite guards and preparing players for the NBA. The choice shocked some Chicago fans who wanted him to stay local, but Derrick's circle believed Memphis offered the fastest path toward professional success. And they were right. At Memphis, Derrick Rose faced his biggest challenge yet. For the first time in his life, he wasn't the unquestioned best athlete on the court. College basketball is faster, stronger, more structured, but Derrick adapted quickly. Calipari built Memphis's offense around Rose's speed and decision-making. He encouraged Derrick to attack relentlessly, turning him into a transition nightmare for opposing teams. Memphis dominated. Derrick averaged impressive numbers as a freshman and led the Tigers to a historic season. But his most defining moment came during the 2008 NCAA tournament. March Madness is where legends are introduced to the world, and Derrick Rose didn't just play well, he exploded. Against elite competition, Rose showcased breathtaking athleticism, fearless drives, and calm decision-making under pressure. In the national championship game against Kansas, Rose delivered one of the greatest performances ever by a freshman guard. He scored 18 points, controlled the tempo, outplayed older, experienced opponents. Though Memphis ultimately lost in overtime after a dramatic comeback by Kansas, the basketball world had seen enough. Derrick Rose wasn't just NBA ready, he looked like a future superstar. Before entering the NBA draft, controversy surfaced regarding Rose's standardized test scores and academic eligibility during his Memphis tenure. The investigation cast temporary shadows over his legacy. Critics questioned legitimacy. Supporters defended his character. But through it all, Derrick remained silent. He never fought headlines with interviews. He never attacked critics publicly. He simply prepared for the next step. Because Derrick Rose had spent his entire life ignoring noise, and this was just another obstacle. By 2008, NBA scouts unanimously projected Derrick Rose as one of the top prospects in the draft. His combination of speed, court vision, and finishing ability was generational. But something even more poetic was unfolding. The Chicago Bulls, Derrick's hometown team, held strong lottery odds for the #1 pick. And when the ping-pong balls fell in Chicago's favor, the city erupted. For the first time since Michael Jordan, Chicago believed destiny was returning home. Derrick Rose declared for the 2008 NBA draft at just 19 years old. From Inglewood streets to national spotlight, from silent kid to city icon, from survival to superstardom's doorstep. He had outrun poverty. He had outrun doubt. He had outrun expectations. But destiny had one final twist. The fastest player basketball had ever seen was about to return to the city where he first learned to run. And Chicago was ready to crown its new king. They just didn't know yet that his greatest battles wouldn't come from defenders. They would come from fate itself.